Alright, 6th grade, today we're talking about the order of operations. So you heard a little bit of a story today about Gemma, my girl, and I'm going to show you all the tricks that she ever taught me, because I told you she's good at math, so let's see how she does it. Well, Gemma is really great at putting things together. She follows the order of operations. That's what you need to do. That's what you need to know. She knows how to combine things well. She knows how to put numbers together, and she and I just came together just like the numbers in an expression come together well. And well, how does Gemma do it so well? It's because her name stands for the order in which we will combine numbers. First, we need to pay attention to grouping symbols, and we're going to do a few examples of those. So the ones that we're most common with is we see parentheses all the time, but I'm also going to ask you to remember that brackets are another grouping symbol. We also have the fraction bar is a grouping symbol. It groups the things on top and the things on bottom, so you need to combine those numbers before we do the division that the fraction bar represents or the division bar represents. There's the absolute value bars, which we'll talk more about later, and finally the radical sign. Radical dude. So we're going to talk more about these two later on, but these three are the ones that you really need to be familiar with. So I'm going to ask you to remember those. Gemma tells us that we need to start by focusing on the grouping symbols and combining the numbers that are grouped together first. They're grouped for a reason, and so we pay attention and we combine those numbers first. After we've grouped everything that's grouped together and we've combined those numbers, still following Gemma, we then focus on the exponents. We need to use our exponents, and we know powers and degrees, and we know how to use those, so that's the next step. Finally, we do multiplication and division from left to right. So this is what Gemma tells us that's a little bit different from the way a lot of people are taught, is that multiplication and division go together. You do those at the same time. It's just a matter of whichever is further to the left. Because we read left to right in English class, we're going to do the same in math when we're reading math expressions or equations. Same thing applies for addition and subtraction. You do those at the same time, just you got to start with whatever's further to the left. Now I'm going to tell you about why Gemma is so great, why I think she's so wonderful, and to do that we need to focus on her arch nemesis, maybe you could say, and that's PEMDAS. So most people are taught by PEMDAS, and PEMDAS does a good job, especially because I know a lot of teachers do a great job teaching with PEMDAS, but I'm going to tell you today that PEMDAS is not who we're going to follow. She'll lead you wrong in ways that Gemma never will. And I'm going to give you two examples right here. So if we have 8 divided by 2 times 4, that's the first example. PEMDAS makes it seem like we should be doing multiplication before division. She would say 2 times 4 is 8, and 8 divided by 8 is 1. But that's incorrect. The answer to this expression, or the simplified version of this expression, is not 1. Gemma tells us we do multiplication and division from left to right. So she would say we start to the left and we do division first. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So this would be 4 times 4, which is equal to 16. Not 1. So if you follow PEMDAS, you would actually get the wrong answer. I know a lot of teachers teach it well and tell you to pay attention to that, but I like that Gemma makes sure that we know that multiplication and division go left to right. The second example is 8 minus 2 plus 4. So in this case, again, PEMDAS makes it seem like the A comes before the S and that we should be adding first. But Gemma says adding and subtracting goes left to right. So we start with a subtraction because it's further left. So we just read this left to right. We see 8 minus 2 is 6. 6 plus 4. 6 plus 4 would be 10. If you were following PEMDAS incorrectly, you might say 2 plus 4 is 6. 8 minus 6 is 2. You would get the wrong answer again. So Gemma will never lead you wrong. She's got the right answer all the time. I need to do a little clearing before we move on with these two. So the first example problem, maybe you can start looking at it and thinking about what do you think we should do there, following Gemma and her order of operation mastery. So that's some old stuff I need to get rid of. So 19 plus 3 times 6 minus the quantity of 4 plus 14 over 6. Do we have any grouping symbols? Gemma says start with grouping symbols. Well, we said that the division bar tells us to group the top and the bottom. We need to combine the top and with what's on top and combine the bottom with what's on bottom before we divide. So in this case, 4 plus 14, we'll have 19 plus 3 times 6 minus top 4 plus 14 would be 18 over 6. Gemma says exponents next. We don't have any exponents, so then we're going to move right on to M. M says multiplication and division from left to right, so we're not going to add next because we need to do multiplication and division right here. And here we're going to multiply these two. 19 plus 3 times 6 is 18. And then before we subtract any values, we can actually do this division as well because we need to do the division before we subtract it. So 18 divided by 6 is 3. Now finally A says add and subtract from left to right, so we're going to do 19 plus 18. That will give us 37, and then we'll subtract 3 for a final answer of 34. Hopefully that makes sense. We're moving left to right whenever we have multiplication, division, or addition, subtraction. Number 2, we look, and again, we're looking for grouping symbols. This is all grouped with parentheses at the start. Now what I want to point out here is that inside the grouping symbols, this is telling us before we add or do anything else, we need to simplify what's grouped. We need to put these 3 together. But once we're inside the grouping symbols, which Gemma told us to go to first, now we need to still follow Gemma and do multiplication and division before we do addition and subtraction. So the first thing we can do is say, this will be now 8 plus the multiplication would be 8 plus 4 times 2 is 8, plus, now we can know, we'll wait for that. You might be able to see what I was about to do. 2 times 3 minus 9. Now again, the grouping symbols tells us to add 8 and 8, and we get 16. But now I'll say that before we're going to add the 2 or subtract the 9, we know that multiplication comes next, so we can already do the multiplication. 2 times 3, Gemma says is 6, and we're doing that before addition and subtraction left to right, so it's okay. Now finally 16 plus 6, and then we'll subtract 9 because addition, subtraction left to right. 16 plus 6, 22 minus 9 would be 13. So there's our final answer. As always, I'm going to leave you with some problems to do on your own. So here we go. We have number 1, 12 plus 3 times the quantity of, and then when I say the quantity of, I mean parentheses. 12 plus 3 times, in parentheses, 7 plus 2. So figure out in what order are you going to combine those numbers. And number 2 is 5 squared, or 5 to the second power, minus 9 plus 15. So I want you to think about what is Gemma going to say to do about that exponent. Best of luck. I will see you.